In this video, I'm going to utter words that everyone is going to be shocked and amazed by. John Harvey Kellogg was right. John Harvey Kellogg was the head of Battle Creek Sanitarium and was basically, I would say, the one that's primarily responsible with bringing Seventh-day Adventist health ideas to the mainstream. Unfortunately, the mainstream watered them down. I do plan on buying his book on biologic living and doing a review of it. I think I'll probably purchase it as soon as I get done making this video. But ultimately, what people need to keep in mind, a lot of people have made fun of John Harvey Kellogg and the Battle Creek Sanitarium and the methods of healing that went on at Battle Creek Sanitarium. What I would like to point out is the health recommendations at Battle Creek Sanitarium have created the blue zone with the longest lived people. Okay? Think about that. When you start thinking about health advice and diets and exercise programs like, I don't know, the carnivore diet, for example, how many blue zones do you think are going to exist in the world where they follow a carnivore diet? Not many. And what you'll notice about this is a lot of people, a lot of the areas that people think were the healthiest weren't necessarily the healthiest. And this is what I've tried explaining. The Tarahumara diet, the Tarahumara Indians, they do eat a healthful diet of beans and corn primarily, okay? But they do not live much longer than the average person. The reason why is because they are not restricting overall caloric intake. They're eating a healthy diet, but they're not overall restricting calories like everyone else in the blue zones. Okay? As you know from a previous video I made, exercise does help increase lifespan, but it does not help increase maximum lifespan. Exercise helps to reduce disease states, but it does not help to extend life longer. The only way we know to do that is through the use of things. Now we're finding animal models, but even they match what John Harvey Kellogg recommended, which is a high phytonutrient diet. He might not have known about phytonutrients at the time. Other things that he pioneered, heliotherapy, light therapy. Okay, we know light therapy is amazing, especially where he was in Michigan, where it's not really that bright. So he pioneered heliotherapy, thermal therapy, hydrotherapy. What else? So heliotherapy, hydrotherapy, the idea of fresh air and exercise. Physical culture. What's funny is the one lecture I'm going to leave a link to, the guy goes, I don't know what he means by physical culture. If you don't know what physical culture is, you've lived under a rock. Both the United States and Britain have a very, very rich history of what physical culture is. And even Germany, like with Arthur Saxon and people like that, physical culture was essentially the Seventh-day Adventist health message, just not as vegetarian and vegan and things like that. The diet of the Adventists is where the money shot is. That's where the money shot is, the diet and the avoidance of bad things. So my point is what people need to understand. Now, why do people make fun of Kellogg? Kellogg had some what are by today's standards, odd views. Like masturbation made you go crazy, it caused rotting of the nails, things like that. However, what they're not looking at is his ardent dislike toward alcohol. At the time of Kellogg, using alcohol to stimulate people was a common practice in medicine. Okay, just think about that. They're giving sick people alcohol. Okay? Then you go a little further, he was also a very ardent person against tobacco. At that time, you had tobacco commercials geared toward children in the 1950s, and you're talking, or 1940s, 1950s, and then you have
tobacco being pushed by doctors. Most doctors smoke Philip Morris, things like that, in the 1950s and 60s. This is the 1800s, the late 1800s, and Kellogg is promoting the elimination of tobacco because it causes severe harm, cancer, high blood pressure, etc. He knew this before other people did. So people laugh at a lot of the things that he said that were actually quite normal for the time, such as masturbation causing insanity and things of that nature. They're completely ignoring the evidence behind his dietary recommendations, his exercise recommendations, a lot of things that people don't understand. You don't need hard, destructive physical exercise. If you look at the blue zones, one of the things that's shared by all of the blue zones is moderate exercise, walking, gardening, but you're constantly exercising. You're getting 6-7 hours of exercise a day, but it's moderate, keeping your muscles toned, things like this. And I'm going to get into how this functions, because this is the heart and soul of epigenetic aging. And I will get into this when I do the informational theory of aging / epigenetic theory of aging, which will be coming soon, because I did finally get my book by, I'm looking for it, I might not have it near me, no, not near me, my book from Dr. Wallach, who was one of the co-founders of epigenetics. I got his book, so that's going to add to my summary of Dr. David Sinclair's book, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, or something like that. I forget the direct name of the book, the exact name of the book. But I have a feeling Dr. Sinclair's book is less important. A lot of the concepts promoted by Dr. Kellogg are the same methods promoted by a lot of the gerontologists and things of today to, keep you younger longer. Now, people might look at Kellogg and go, wow, he looked like people will look at him and go, I didn't know they stacked shit that high. But the thing is, what you have to understand, and also he recommended proper rest, these things. What you have to understand is Dr. Kellogg did not necessarily follow his own advice. That was the problem. He did not necessarily sleep enough. He did not necessarily get proper exercise. It is true that certain things like cornflakes might not be the best for you, but there's nothing wrong with whole corn. That's what people aren't understanding is you have to look at his recommendations in context to the time periods. Cornflakes are still better for you than a lot of things people are eating for breakfast. It's better to have a bowl of cornflakes and some raisins with a nice helping of soy milk or oat milk or something of that nature than it is to have any number of pastries or donuts or bagels and cream cheese or bagels and lox or any of that stuff. Especially if the cornflakes are fortified, which they are. I believe they're fortified with the B vitamins and the iron and all that stuff. So I haven't eaten, to be honest, I haven't eaten breakfast cereal in over 20 years. I have not. I think I had Kashi Goleen a couple times years ago because it was a high protein cereal. But even that was maybe once or twice a year I would buy a box of it because I'm not a big cereal. I eat oatmeal. Like when I have cereal, I eat like gruel. I eat oatmeal or split pea porridge, things of that nature. I'm not a huge fan of breakfast cereals. It's just something, I don't care for them very much. But the thing is, what you need to keep in mind is that Dr. Kellogg's advice resulted in people living to 100 years old. This is different from people like Dr. Sean Baker, the carnivore guru, or Dr. Paul Saladino, or even Weston Price. That's what okay, Weston Price, what you will notice is the places where Weston Price looked, and I'll leave a documentary to the Weston Price documentary of Everywhere He Looked, not really heavy in the centenarians. Not really heavy in all that heavy in the centenarians. That's what you got to look at. If you compare the blue zones to where Dr. Price looked, not too many centenarians, not too many blue zones were investigated by Dr. Weston Price. Again, with Dr. Price, I love Dr. Price's work. I think it's very, it was very seminal to the understanding of nutrition, particularly with vitamins and minerals and tooth health and things of that nature. But we need to keep in mind that the context, vitamins were only discovered a few years before Dr. Price started his investigations, and I don't believe vitamins were discovered at the time of Dr. Kellogg. I can look into that, but I don't think they even knew what vitamins were at the time of Dr. Kellogg. So my point is when you take everything into context, and if you're serious about understanding an Adventist diet and an Adventist lifestyle, I strongly recommend looking up the books by Jethro Kloss, Back to Eden and the Back to Eden cookbook. I think people really do. Oh, another thing about Kellogg. Kellogg was a eugenist. Okay, so he got that right too. Despite what people think, they might want to lambaste him or deride him and say eugenics is a pseudoscience. It is a super science. No, I'm just joking. It is legit science, and I'm going to leave links to the Galton Institute and to the Eugenics Foundation in the United States, Future Horizons, so that people can see, eugenics is essentially the same thing as animal husbandry applied to people. There's nothing, I'm not for anything that strict. I favor more of a genetic therapy type of idea and the use of gene therapy, epigenetics, and simply letting people find their own level. And to stop with the political correctness and the brainwashing of people that everybody is exactly the same and everybody should do whatever the heck they want and blah, 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 blah. And again, I support the concepts of La Raza Cosmica as promoted by Jose Vasconcelos, which is different than some of the concepts promoted by John Harvey Kellogg, because I'm not going to mention them because I want my video to stay up. But my point is that Dr. Kellogg was right on all fronts. Now, some of the practices that he practiced at that time, which were crazy, and some of the recommendations and ideas that he had regarding things like masturbation, sexual promiscuity, well, not really sexual promiscuity is dangerous because it increases your risk of contracting VD and getting sick and dying. But the thing is, some of his views towards, like, say, depleting your seed, which are similar to, like, the Asian, the Chinese Jing concept, the concept of ejaculating too much depletes the Jing and shortens the lifespan. These are obviously not accurate, but the thing is, you have to look at them in the context of the time. Now, it is true that constant ejaculation will deplete the testosterone of men. That's true. Chronic masturbation does actually deplete the testosterone in men. So keep that in mind. That's not wrong. That's actually backed by science. But it hardly backs the whole spiel. You know what I mean? But tobacco, very right about tobacco. Very right about alcohol. Very right about diet. Very right about the dangers of meat. These are the things. You look at what he promoted. He was right, far more right than he was wrong. Right about heliotherapy to a large extent. Wrong perhaps with how much he recommended sun, which could probably increase the risk of cancer, but right about the need for sunlight, the need for fresh air. Look at the green therapy of walking in the woods and how it benefits ADHD and autism and things of that nature. These are real therapies that really work, that were being recommended by Dr. Kellogg 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. So, that's almost 200 years ago. So you have to take everything into context. And you have to recognize dude was right. Dude was right. And Cornelius the Rooster, one of my favorite mascots. And I'm not necessarily against Tony the Tiger. but Tony the Tiger was against Dr. Kellogg's original desire for healthful foods. Also, Dr. Kellogg first promoted the use of meat analogs. Things like soy burgers and soy chicken and soy this and soy that and sunflower seed yogurt and sunflower seed mayonnaise and things of this nature. The use of things that were not the vegan meat substitutes, dairy substitutes, etc. were pioneered by Dr. Kellogg. So also keep that in mind. I mean, there's a lot that he should be given credit for. And that's all for this video.